Hello, everybody. Benjamin Johnston here. A couple days ago, I saw Incredibles 2, and it's been like 14 years since the first movie came out, and I was like 10 when I saw that movie in the theaters. So, waiting a long time for a movie like this to come out like that, I mean, it's quite a while. And with the first movie is pretty much an excellent Pixar movie, and it's like it's kind of one of those more edgier kind of Pixar movies where it was a little bit more violent in terms of in comparison with like previous movies, but there's this great sense of humor that the movie has. It also has really good characters. It just was an overall very satisfying movie, and what you would think that after so many years that the second movie wouldn't live up to the hype of like what came beforehand, but in all honesty, Incredibles 2 is just as good, but maybe even better than the first movie. I mean, they're both pretty close in my opinion, but I might prefer the second movie over the first one. I'll explain why in a bit, but basically, The Incredibles 2 is basically in that movie, it revolves essentially, it picks up right after the first movie, where the first movie left off, and it essentially shows like the main premise is that they're trying to bring supers back into like they're trying to make them legal again, and they decide there's this group, two people that are advocating for more superheroes to be back into the spotlight. So they decide to bring Elastigirl to essentially be used as a way to promote the fact that no, the superheroes are actually doing some good stuff. They're not intentionally trying to cause property damage like a lot of citizens believe. And so that's basically the premise of the movie. And Mr. Incredible has to essentially stay home this time to watch the kids, to look after them, and he's basically kind of missing or a little bit envious of what Elastigirl is doing rather than him doing it as well. So that's essentially the premise of the movie. Now, when I saw like the trailer for the movie, I was a little nervous about it because they do focus on like the fact that Mr. Incredible's taking care of the kids, and I feel like this sounds like a step backwards from it based on like what it initially sounds like. But in all honesty, they're actually fantastic. Like I was genuinely surprised that it all worked out like that. It's really funny and it's not cheap. It feels like you really do want to see Mr. Incredible succeed in his parenting. I mean, that was what made this whole scenario both really engaging and also really funny. Also, there's parts with the baby Jack Jack who gets a lot more screen time in this movie than the last movie, and there's definitely some of the funniest parts of the movie. I mean, there's a particular part where Jack Jack is fighting against like a raccoon that's like going through all this garbage, and it's like something out of a Looney Tunes cartoon, and it works really well in terms of the whole comedy aspect of it. It feels cartoony, but it's supposed to be. It's kind of how it's cartoony in a good way. It's not obnoxious. It's done really well, and the thing I like better in the second movie than the first movie is that the whole idea of like it feels like an expansion of like the Incredibles universe. Like it's like they're showing more of like the politics around it, and not that the politics weren't in the first movie. It's just in the second movie it's more of a focus in that one than the first movie, and I thought that was a really interesting way of doing it. And I think the other thing that I liked in this movie better than the first movie is that I think the first movie felt a little slow in certain parts. Like it was a little slower paced during certain sections of the movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, the movie's still fantastic, but it's just with the second movie, things felt more natural of a pace, and I was able to, I was more invested because of that. Uh, Now, one thing that the first movie did better, I would say, than the second movie is that I will say the villain in the first movie, Syndrome, is actually it is a little more of an interesting character than what we have in the second movie. Not that the second movie's villain is bad; it's actually quite decent in how that's handled, and the voice acting is really good in that area also. Um, but it's just that's just one aspect of the first movie that I do think is a little better. Uh, and the animation is really good, and it definitely exceeds what the first film did. And the hair technology has like quite improved since the first movie. Like it looks more real this time than previous movies. I mean, you compare like the hair technology in like the first Toy Story, and you can see definitely more of that leap than what the f- than what like than like the previous movies have done. Uh, as far as like faults with the movie, honestly, it's really hard to think of any, and most of it's kind of nitpicky. I think the one thing that I would have loved to see more Frozone. He's like he might be in it as much as the first movie, but it's just like I just wanted to see more Frozone. It's because Frozone's a really cool character. It's been 14 years, and Incredibles 2 is most certainly worth the wait, and it really delivered. And in my opinion, like I don't know if I'm like kind of in the I might be in the minority, but I think I might like this more than the first movie. So after 14 years, it's worth it, man. Go watch the movie in theaters. It's really good. So anyway, that was my review for Incredibles 2. Thank you all guys for watching, and take care of yourselves.